They came to Earth with battleships the size of cities. They expected us to kneel, to marvel, to surrender. But when the skies tore open and our fleet rose from the shadows, it was not awe that filled them, it was fear. Who built these ships? Why were they hidden beneath our world for so long? And what ancient war have we just reawakened? Stay with me, because this is not just a story of invasion. It is a story of a terrifying truth humanity was never meant to uncover. So watch till the end, because once you hear what really happened out there, you will never look at the stars the same way again. Aliens thought we would be impressed by their battleships, until they saw ours. The sky split open with light. A sound rolled across the horizon, deep and metallic, as if the earth itself was groaning. Shadows fell across the cities, stretching for miles as colossal alien battleships descended. Their hulls gleamed like black glass, edges glowing with cold blue fire. The air tasted like iron. Every breath carried the tang of ozone and ash, as if a storm had been pulled into our lungs. People froze in the streets, eyes tilted upward, wide with awe and terror. The ships moved with perfect silence now, hovering above oceans, deserts, and capitals. Then came the voice. It boomed through the sky without speakers, without echo, as if it was inside every mind. We bring you warships forged from the bones of stars. Behold and tremble. The air seemed heavier. The ground vibrated with their power, faint but undeniable, like the rumble before an earthquake. And yet, the silence of our leaders was not fear. The commanders stood in hidden bunkers, eyes locked on screens, fingers poised over keys. They knew something the rest of us did not. The aliens waited for awe, for surrender, for the cracking of human pride. But what came instead was a low hum from beneath the earth. The ocean stirred, mountains shivered, and from the shadows of the planet's crust, vast shapes began to rise. Metal plates unfolded like the wings of ancient titans. Cities shook as hidden hangars cracked open, revealing steel giants slumbering beneath for generations. The alien voice faltered. For the first time, hesitation leaked into their tone. What is this? The sky glowed with human fire. Our battleships ascended, larger than stadiums, engines roaring like dragons awakening from centuries of sleep. The ground lit up with flame as thrusters shattered the silence. Glass windows across cities rattled and burst as our machines tore into the sky. And for a fleeting moment, the aliens who expected worship felt something else instead. Discomfort, doubt, fear. The alien fleet hovered, their sleek forms blotting out the sun. But now they were no longer alone in the sky. Our machines rose, black silhouettes against the burning clouds, each one armed with weapons that pulsed like molten veins. The world seemed to hold its breath. Every sound muted. Even the wind fell silent. Then, a shriek split the heavens. Not from us, from them. The alien ships fired first, beams of searing white lashing across the sky. The air itself screamed as the blast tore through the atmosphere, ripping clouds into steam. But when the beams struck, our ships did not fall. They shimmered, shields flaring like suns, bending light into rippling waves. The ground shook as one of our ships answered. A cannon roared, not with light, but with sound. A vibration that rattled bones, shattered windows, and made every living thing on Earth clutch its ears. The alien vessel that had fired buckled, metal plates twisting as if crushed by invisible hands. Smoke poured into the sky. For the first time, alien silence was not control. It was shock. They had thought themselves untouchable, invincible. But in the reflection of our rising fleet, they saw something terrifying. Humanity had been waiting, not for peace, not for surrender, but for this exact moment. And as the earth roared with engines and fire, one truth became clear. The hunters had just realized they were the prey. The alien fleet shifted, their sleek hulls glowing brighter, as if bracing for what they could not understand. A pulse of light streaked across the sky, a desperate second strike, burning the air into a red haze. This time, our ships moved. They did not evade. They advanced. Engines howled like storms, ripping the clouds apart as they surged forward. The first collision was not metal against metal. It was force against force. The sky cracked with energy. A flash blinded millions below, turning night into day. When vision cleared, an alien battleship spun helplessly, its hull torn open like paper, spilling fire into the upper atmosphere. Its fall painted the heavens with streaks of orange flame. The ground trembled as debris rained into the sea, waves rising like walls that slammed against coastlines. But our ships did not stop. They pressed upward, chasing the alien fleet into higher skies. The air was filled with the roar of engines, the screech of metal, the violent symphony of war. Inside one alien command ship, silence reigned. Their commanders stared at screens filled with chaos, with human weapons tearing their forces apart. One of them whispered, voice trembling, words not meant for us but carried across the comms anyway. They should not have this power. Outside, another of our cannons fired. Its sound was not a roar this time, but a low, rolling thunder, as if the earth itself had spoken. An alien vessel disintegrated mid-flight, scattering fragments that burned like meteors across the horizon. The invaders had wanted awe. They had wanted fear. But now their own terror hung in the air, thick as smoke. And above it all, our fleet climbed higher, chasing them into the void. The atmosphere broke apart behind them as both fleets tore free of Earth's sky. Silence followed. No wind, no thunder, no sound of engines, only the infinite hush of space. But in that silence, the battle became even more violent. Alien ships darted forward, sleek and sharp, their weapons slicing through the void like threads of lightning. Our ships were different, heavier, older, but forged for this very moment. From hidden launch bays along their sides, swarms of smaller crafts poured out like sparks from a furnace. They moved fast, weaving through alien fire, cutting across the battlefield with impossible precision. Explosions bloomed silently in the void, each one a flower of fire that painted the black canvas of space. One of the alien flagships turned, massive and burning, its structure cracking apart. It tried to flee. It never had the chance. A beam from our largest vessel cut through it like glass, splitting the ship in half. The pieces drifted, glowing, breaking apart into debris fields that tumbled into the cold dark. For a moment, everything paused. The aliens no longer pressed forward. They hesitated. From their vantage, the planet they sought to conquer glowed below. But circling it now was a wall of steel, a fleet far larger than they had believed possible. Their commander's voice slipped into the void, a broadcast across all channels. This cannot be humanity. This is something else. What had they become? Inside our ships, there was no celebration. Only focus. Hands gripped controls. Eyes locked on targets. Because every pilot, every soldier, every commander knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. The alien fleet drifted, wounded and uncertain. They had expected victory. Instead, they stared into the cold steel of an armada that should not exist. Our ships moved with precision, every formation tight, every maneuver flawless. It was not chaos. It was orchestration, the kind of discipline that spoke of planning far beyond human lifetimes. And the aliens felt it. Their hesitation curdled into fear. Another human vessel advanced, vast and angular, its hull engraved with markings that no Earthborn language could claim. The symbols glowed faintly, as though the ship itself remembered something ancient. One alien commander whispered across his channel, his voice thin and brittle. These ships, they're not new. They're older than your species. The words hung in the silence of space like a curse. Inside the human flagship, Captain Rourke listened without expression. He gave no denial. He gave no explanation. Only a command. Fire. A storm of weapons lit the void, each shot precise, tearing through alien defenses like parchment. Ships exploded in silence, fragments drifting like dying stars. The alien fleet broke formation. Panic rippled through their ranks. Their pride shattered, their arrogance drowned in fire and steel. And still, our ships advanced. From Earth, billions watched. Screens flickered with images of battleships that had risen from nowhere. Mothers held their children tighter. Soldiers stared in silence. Leaders whispered questions no one dared answer. Because deep inside, a truth clawed at them all. These ships were ours, but they were not made by us. And the aliens were not the only ones beginning to fear what humanity had awakened. The battlefield had shifted. Alien warships, once majestic and untouchable, now scattered like prey animals fleeing the hunter. They dove into the black, engines flaring in desperation, but our fleet pressed close, every move a shadow of inevitability. The humans on the ground celebrated. But in the command chambers, no one smiled. Eyes flicked to monitors, where ship schematics glowed with impossible details. Blueprints etched with unknown codes. Engines that pulsed with energy no scientist alive could fully explain. Weapons that seemed to think before they fired. Captain Rourke stood alone at the viewport of the flagship, watching the alien retreat. The glass reflected his face, stern, unyielding. Yet behind him, the faint glow of those strange markings crawled across the steel walls. Markings that had not been painted. Markings that had grown. His second-in-command finally broke the silence. "Sir, the crews are asking questions. They want to know who built these ships." Rourke did not turn. He did not blink. They do not need to know. Above them, another alien vessel was torn apart, a blossom of light in the endless dark. The silence after the blast was heavier than the explosion itself, because in that silence, the question hung like a shadow over every soul who saw the battle. If these ships were not built by us, then who, or what, had left them for us to find? And why were they waiting for this exact moment to awaken? The alien fleet no longer fought. They ran. But even as they retreated into the endless dark, their commanders whispered frantic reports across encrypted channels. Their words trembled with disbelief. "We know these ships. We have seen them before." Static filled the comms, voices breaking as if the void itself resisted the memory. Another alien officer cried out, his voice raw with panic. They were not built by humans. They were never meant for humans. On Earth, the transmissions leaked. Interceptors caught fragments, broken phrases, half-screamed warnings. The world listened in silence. Scientists replayed the audio, their hands shaking, their faces pale. Ancient records, scraps of myths and ruins buried deep, suddenly aligned with the words. Not weapons of man, not inventions of science. Relics, dormant leviathans, sleeping in the bones of the planet, waiting for a signal that had finally come. Captain Rourke gripped the railing as another wave of alien wreckage drifted past his viewport. Their terror was not victory. It was a mirror, because if the aliens feared these ships, if they remembered them, then it meant something worse than invasion had just begun. The ships were not just ours to command. They were watching us too. And somewhere deep in their ancient cores, something stirred. Something that might not care who won this war. The alien fleet no longer fought. They ran. But even as they retreated into the endless dark, their commanders whispered frantic reports across encrypted channels. Their words trembled with disbelief. "We know these ships. We have seen them before." Static filled the comms, voices breaking as if the void itself resisted the memory. Another alien officer cried out, his voice raw with panic. They were not built by humans. They were never meant for humans. On Earth, the transmissions leaked. Interceptors caught fragments, broken phrases, half-screamed warnings. The world listened in silence. Scientists replayed the audio, their hands shaking, their faces pale. Ancient records, scraps of myths and ruins buried deep, suddenly aligned with the words. Not weapons of man, not inventions of science. Relics, dormant leviathans, sleeping in the bones of the planet, waiting for a signal that had finally come. Captain Rourke gripped the railing as another wave of alien wreckage drifted past his viewport. Their terror was not victory. It was a mirror, because if the aliens feared these ships, if they remembered them, then it meant something worse than invasion had just begun. The ships were not just ours to command. They were watching us too. And somewhere deep in their ancient cores, something stirred. something that might not care who won this war. The human crews stood frozen, still reeling from the voice that was not a voice. The ships did not move. They loomed in orbit, silent, their hulls glowing faintly with shifting patterns no scientist could decipher. The Earth below watched in awe, unaware that victory had turned into something far more dangerous. Far away, in the shadows of space, the fleeing alien fleet regrouped. Inside their flagship, chaos reigned. Voices clashed over the comms, commanders shouting, scientists trembling, soldiers whispering old prayers. One voice cut through the noise, an elder among them, his face pale, his tone broken. "You fools! You woke the architects." The chamber went silent. Even the hum of the ship seemed to die. The word carried a weight that chilled every alien present. The elder's eyes flicked to the hologram of Earth, where the human fleet now circled like silent predators. They do not belong to the humans. They never will. Those ships were built in wars older than this galaxy. We buried them here, thinking no one would ever find them. The younger officers shook their heads, denial flooding their voices. But they responded to the humans. They fight for them. The elder's reply was hollow. No, they fight because they have awakened. They fight because they are hungry. A silence stretched, longer than any explosion, heavier than any loss. The aliens stared at the glowing Earth, at the fleet that was not human, not alien, but something else entirely. And for the first time in countless conquests, the invaders whispered the word they had never spoken before. Run! Back on the Resolute, Captain Rourke felt the ship's pulse quicken beneath his feet. The heartbeat was no longer slow. It was rising. And though he stood at the heart of humanity's greatest weapon, a truth gnawed at him like a shadow in the dark. The ship was not asking permission. It was deciding. The hum inside the Resolute grew louder. Panels along the walls slid open on their own, revealing machinery no human had ever seen. Pipes of glowing liquid pulsed like veins, spreading through the ship's body as if it were a living thing. Crew members staggered back, their weapons drawn though useless. "Captain," one whispered, his face pale, "we are not in control anymore." Rourke clenched his jaw, staring at the shifting symbols that crawled across the glass of the viewport. They were no longer static carvings. They were language, and they were speaking. The words formed slowly, burning themselves into the surface with cold blue light. The war is not over. Outside, the other awakened ships echoed the same transformation. Beams of light arced between them like silent signals, faster than human comms, carrying a language no one alive could understand. The alien survivors, watching from the edge of the system, saw it first. The fleet was not regrouping. It was aligning, not around Earth, not around the humans, but around something further, deeper in the void. The elder alien closed his eyes, his voice breaking as he whispered to those who still listened. They are remembering the path. They are not here for Earth. They are here to finish what they started. On the Resolute, alarms screamed as the ship's engines activated without command. The crew scrambled to their stations, shouting over one another. "Sir, navigation is locked out. Propulsion is overriding us." Rourke's voice thundered above the chaos. "Where are we going?" The main screen flickered, coordinates flashing across it. The stars shifted as the fleet turned, engines burning with blinding fire. The destination was not Earth. It was not human space. It was somewhere no chart had ever marked. A place so far, so hidden, it chilled the blood just to see the numbers. The crew fell silent as the last message burned across every screen. Awakening complete. The architects returned. And with that, the fleet leapt into the dark. The stars stretched into lines as the fleet tore itself into hyperspace. The human crews felt the pull in their bones, not just acceleration, but something deeper, like being dragged through memories that were not their own. Eyes burned with flashes of images, ruins on dead worlds, skies torn apart by fire, shapes too enormous to comprehend. When the distortion ended, silence returned. But the silence was wrong. It was too thick, too heavy, as if sound itself had abandoned this place. The screens lit up with a view no one had ever charted. A dead system. No sun, no warmth. Only a black star, collapsed long ago, its gravity pulling light into a pit of endless night. Around it drifted wreckage. Not asteroids. Not rocks. Ships. Thousands. Some larger than cities, their skeletons frozen in the void, torn open as if by gods at war. The human crews stared, breath shallow, hearts hammering. The relics had not brought them to safety. They had brought them to a graveyard, and the graveyard was stirring. From the wreckage, faint glows began to pulse. Dull at first, then brighter. Lights crawled across dead hulls, waking machinery that had slept for eons. One by one, colossal shadows turned their faces toward the living fleet. The Resolute shook, its hull vibrating like a drum. The symbols on its walls flared with violent light, and the message came again, this time a roar that split the minds of every human aboard. The architects return. The war resumes. Captain Rourke gripped the railing until his knuckles bled, his voice low, almost swallowed by the hum of the awakening graveyard. My God, we were never their masters. We were their messengers. The graveyard awakened. Silent titans, long dead, now glowed with rivers of light, their broken hulls knitting together as if time itself reversed. The humans stood in terror. The aliens, watching from a distance, whispered their final confirmation. The architects have returned. The war will consume again. But something unexpected happened. The relic fleet did not attack. They aligned. Their immense forms turned, each one pivoting toward the collapsed star at the center of the system. The glow intensified until the void itself trembled, as if the ships were not gathering for battle, but for purpose. On the Resolute, Captain Rourke and his crew clung to their stations as a voice filled their minds once more. Not violent, not cruel, but absolute. You are witnesses. The cycle begins anew. Carry the warning. Prepare your kind. And then, the dead system imploded with light. The ancient ships vanished, swallowed in brilliance, leaving only silence and wreckage behind. The Resolute drifted alone, its stolen power gone, its hull suddenly nothing more than steel and rivets once again. The human fleet, now powerless, floated in the dark. But the message burned in every soul aboard. They had not won a war. They had been shown a truth. Humanity was not the first. And when the architects returned, they would not be the last. Captain Rourke stared into the void, his voice calm but heavy as stone. Set course for home. Tell them what we saw. Tell them to be ready. The stars stretched once more as the human ships turned back toward Earth. And in the silence of space, the graveyard slept again, waiting.